The driver grabbed his madam's hand, his eyes filled with fear and desperation. Before Grace could pull away, Thomas pressed his lips against hers. The poor driver was kissing the billionaire heiress. The kiss lasted only seconds, but it felt like the world had stopped. Grace's eyes went wide with shock. Hello family, welcome back. Please take a moment to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. It truly means a lot to us. Don't forget to share it with your friends and loved ones and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. So sit back and relax as we dive into the story. She pushed her father's driver back hard, her hand flying to her mouth. Her heart pounded in her chest like a drum. Thomas stepped back, breathing heavily, his face showing regret and panic. "I'm sorry, madam," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. But you have to listen to me. Your husband is going to kill you." Grace's face burned with anger and confusion. How did a normal morning turn into this nightmare? And why would her father's loyal driver dare to kiss her and say such terrible things about the man she loved? 3 months earlier, life looked very different for Grace. She woke up every morning in her beautiful mansion in Lekki, Lagos. The sun would shine through her silk curtains, and she would smile knowing she had everything a woman could want. Her husband, Michael, was handsome and successful. Everyone in Lagos high society knew his name. He owned businesses across Nigeria and always dressed in expensive suits. When they walked into parties together, people would stare and whisper about how perfect they looked. Grace came from old money. Her father, Mr. Daniel, had been one of the richest men in Port Harcourt before he died 2 years ago. He left everything to Grace, his only daughter. She inherited houses, lands, bank accounts, and businesses worth billions of naira. Michael had swept her off her feet during her time of grief. He was there when she cried. He held her hand at her father's funeral. 6 months after her father died, they got married in a wedding that people still talked about. But lately something felt wrong. Michael started coming home late at night. When Grace asked where he had been, he would kiss her forehead and say, "Business meetings, my love. I'm building our future." His phone rang constantly and he would walk to another room to answer. Sometimes Grace heard him laughing in a way he never laughed with her anymore. When she walked into a room, he would quickly end his calls. One night, Grace made his favorite meal, jollof rice with fried plantains. She set candles on the table and wore the red dress he loved. She waited until 9 o'clock, then 10, then 11. At midnight, Michael finally walked through the door. His shirt was wrinkled and she smelled perfume that was not hers. "Where were you?" she asked, her voice shaking. He barely looked at her. "I told you. Business meeting in Victoria Island. It ran late." He walked past her and went straight to their bedroom. Grace stood alone in the dining room, staring at the cold food. Tears filled her eyes, but she wiped them away. She told herself she was being silly. Michael loved her. He was just stressed from work. Everything would be fine. But Thomas had been watching. And what he saw would change everything. Thomas had worked for Mr. Daniel for 25 years. He was more than just a driver. He was family. When Mr. Daniel died, he promised to always protect Grace no matter what. Thomas lived in a small room behind the mansion. He did not have much money, but he had honor. And honor meant keeping his promise. One evening, Thomas was driving back from the market in Ikeja when he saw something that made his blood run cold. A black Mercedes was parked outside the Golden Tulip Hotel in Victoria Island. Thomas knew that car. It belonged to Michael. He slowed down and watched. Minutes later, Michael walked out of the hotel. But he was not alone. A woman with long braids and a tight red dress held his arm. They were laughing. Michael kissed her cheek before she got into a taxi. Thomas felt sick to his stomach. He wanted to be wrong. Maybe it was just a business partner. Maybe he was seeing things. But deep inside he knew the truth. He followed Michael 3 more times over the next 2 weeks. Each time Michael met the same woman. Sometimes at hotels. Sometimes at restaurants in Ikoyi. Once, Thomas saw them holding hands in a park. Thomas knew he had to tell Grace. But how? She loved Michael so much. She would never believe him. Still, he could not stay silent. Mr. Daniel would have wanted him to speak up. One morning, Thomas found Grace in the garden. She was watering her roses, humming a sad song. Her eyes looked tired, like she had not slept well. "Madam Grace," Thomas said quietly. She turned and smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "Good morning, Thomas. How are you today?" He twisted his cap in his hands. "Madam, I need to talk to you about something very serious." Her smile faded. "What is it?" Thomas took a deep breath. "It is about Mr. Michael. I have seen him with another woman. Many times. At hotels. At restaurants. I am sorry, madam, but he is cheating on you." The flower pot fell from Grace's hands and crashed on the ground. Water and soil spilled everywhere. Her face went pale, then red with anger. "What did you just say?" she whispered. Thomas stepped closer. "I saw him, madam. I followed him because I was worried." The woman, Grace's hand flew up, stopping him. "How dare you?" Her voice was shaking with rage. "How dare you lie about my husband? Michael loves me. He would never do such a thing." "Madam, please listen," Thomas begged. "No. You listen." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "My father trusted you. I trusted you. And this is how you repay us? By spreading evil lies." Thomas felt desperate. She was not hearing him. Time was running out. He could feel it. "Madam Grace, I am not lying. I saw them together. You are in danger. Please, you have to believe." Grace turned to walk away. Without thinking, Thomas grabbed her hand and pulled her back. The kiss happened before either of them could think. Thomas pressed his lips against Grace's, hoping the shock would make her stop and listen. It worked. Grace froze. Her eyes went wide. Then reality hit her like a slap. She shoved Thomas away with all her strength. He stumbled backward, his face filled with horror at what he had just done. "I'm sorry," Thomas said, his voice breaking. "I did not mean to disrespect you. But you must listen. Your life is in danger." Grace's hand trembled as she pointed toward the gate. "Get out. Pack your things and leave my house today. I never want to see your face again." Thomas opened his mouth to speak, but Grace had already turned and run inside the mansion. He stood alone in the garden, knowing he had just made everything worse. Inside her bedroom, Grace locked the door and slid down to the floor. Her whole body shook. She touched her lips, still feeling the shock of what happened. How could Thomas do that? And why would he say such terrible things about Michael? She wanted to believe Thomas was lying. She needed to believe it. But a small voice in her head whispered doubts she could not ignore. That night, Michael came home earlier than usual. Grace watched him carefully. He smiled at her the way he always did. He asked about her day. "You seem normal. Too normal." Grace decided to test him. She had remembered something her father once told her before he died. He had secret bank accounts that only family members knew about. Accounts he never wrote down anywhere. Grace pretended to be on the phone with her father's old lawyer. She spoke loudly, making sure Michael could hear from the living room. "Yes, I remember. The account numbers father kept in Abuja. The ones he never told anyone about. Yes, I will come to sign the papers next week." She ended the fake call and walked into the living room. Michael was sitting on the couch, but his body was stiff. His eyes looked strange. "Who was that?" he asked, trying to sound casual. Grace watched his face carefully. "Just father's lawyer. Some old accounts I need to handle." Michael leaned forward. "What kind of accounts?" There it was. The hunger in his eyes. The sudden interest. Grace felt her heart crack. "Nothing important," she said, testing him further. "Just some money father left. I might donate it to charity." Michael's jaw tightened. "Donate it? Why would you do that?" "We should use it for our future." Grace had never heard him talk about her father's money before. He always said he wanted to build their wealth himself. Now he was practically demanding to know about accounts she had just invented. She excused herself and went to bed early, claiming she had a headache. But Grace did not sleep. Around midnight, she heard Michael's voice coming from his study. She crept quietly to the door and pressed her ear against it. Her blood turned to ice at what she heard. "Yes, Belinda, I heard her on the phone," Michael was saying. His voice sounded excited and greedy. Her father had secret accounts in Abuja. Billion. Once I get the account numbers, we can finally be free." Grace's hand flew to her mouth to stop herself from gasping. There was a woman's voice on the other end. She could not hear the words, but she heard Michael laugh. "Don't worry about Grace. She trusts me completely. She is so naive." Grace felt like the floor was disappearing beneath her feet. Her husband, the man she loved, was plotting with another woman. But then Michael said something that made her knees go weak. "We need to be smart about this. Once I have access to everything, we can make it look like an accident. A car crash maybe. Or a robbery gone wrong. No one will suspect anything. Everyone knows how much I love my wife." Grace could not breathe. Her vision went blurry. Michael was not just cheating. He was planning to kill her. For her money. For her father's legacy. She backed away from the door slowly, afraid to make any sound. Her heart pounded so loud she was sure he would hear it. She made it back to the bedroom and sat on the bed, shaking uncontrollably. Everything made sense now. Michael had appeared right after her father died. He had been so caring, so perfect. He rushed her into marriage. He always asked questions about her father's businesses and properties. She had thought he was just being supportive. But he had been planning this from the beginning. Thomas had been right. And she had sent him away. Grace did not sleep that night. She lay in bed next to Michael, pretending to be asleep while her mind raced. By morning, she knew what she had to do. She had to find Thomas. He was the only person she could trust now. As soon as Michael left for work, Grace drove to the small apartment Thomas rented in Surrey. She had gotten his address from the house records. Thomas opened the door, surprised to see her. His eyes were red like he had been crying. "Madam Grace," he said quietly. Grace's voice broke. "You were right. About everything. I am so sorry I did not believe you." She told him what she had heard. Thomas's face grew dark with anger. "We need to call the police." Grace shook her head. "Not yet. We need proof. Real evidence. Otherwise Michael will talk his way out of it. He is very smart." Thomas nodded slowly. "Then we gather evidence. I will follow him everywhere. I will take pictures, record conversations. Whatever it takes." Grace looked at the man her father had trusted for 25 years. "Thank you, Thomas. I don't know what I would do without you." For the next week, Thomas became a shadow. He followed Michael to every meeting, every hotel, every restaurant. Thomas bought a small camera and hid it in his jacket. He parked far away from wherever Michael went, watching and waiting. On the third day, he saw Michael meet the woman with long braids again. They sat at a restaurant in Lekki Phase 1, holding hands across the table. Thomas took photos from his car. The pictures were clear. Anyone could see they were more than friends. On the fifth day, Thomas followed Michael to a hotel in Ikeja. Michael and the woman went inside together. They stayed for 3 hours. When they came out, Michael kissed her goodbye. Thomas recorded everything on video. His hands shook with anger as he watched. How could a man betray someone as kind as Grace? That evening, Thomas showed Grace the photos and videos. She stared at them for a long time without saying a word. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she did not make a sound. "There is more," Thomas said gently. "I found out where the woman lives. Her name is Belinda. She has an apartment in Victoria Island." Grace wiped her tears and looked up. "Take me there. I want to see it with my own eyes." Thomas was worried. "Madam, maybe that is not a good idea. What if Michael is there?" Grace's voice was cold and steady. "Then I will finally see the truth face to face." The next afternoon, when Michael said he had meetings all day, Grace and Thomas drove to the address Thomas had discovered. It was a fancy apartment building with security guards. Grace told the guard she was Belinda's cousin visiting from Port Harcourt. The guard believed her and let them through. Thomas picked the lock on Belinda's door. He had learned the skill years ago when Mr. Daniel once locked himself out of his office. Inside, the apartment was beautiful. Expensive furniture, silk curtains, designer clothes hanging in the closet. Grace walked through the room slowly, touching things. Then she opened the bedroom drawer. Her breath caught in her throat. Inside were jewelry boxes. Grace opened them one by one. Diamond earrings. A gold necklace. A ruby bracelet. She recognized every single piece. These were gifts Michael had given her for their anniversary, her birthday, and their wedding. The same jewelry she thought she had lost or misplaced. Michael had stolen them and given them to Belinda. Grace's hands trembled as she held the necklace her father had given her on her 18th birthday. It was the last gift he ever gave her before he got sick. Michael knew how much it meant to her. She had cried for days when it disappeared. And all this time it was here around another woman's neck. Something inside Grace broke. Not her spirit, but her fear. She was done being a victim. She took photos of everything. The jewelry, the apartment, the designer bags with receipts showing Michael's credit card. Thomas watched her with respect. This was not the same woman who had refused to believe him. Grace and Thomas left the apartment with all the evidence they needed. Back at the mansion, Grace spread everything out on the dining table. Photos of Michael and Belinda. Videos of them kissing. Pictures of her stolen jewelry. Bank statements Thomas had found showing Michael transferring huge amounts of money to Belinda's account. It was all there. Every piece of betrayal laid bare. "What now?" Thomas asked. Grace looked at him with eyes that had turned from soft to steel. "Now we protect my father's legacy. And we make sure Michael pays for what he planned to do." She called her father's lawyer, Mr. Okonkwo, a tough man who had worked with her family for 30 years. She explained everything. Mr. Okonkwo listened carefully, then said, "I will contact the police commissioner. He was your father's friend. We will handle this properly." That evening, Grace cooked dinner like nothing was wrong. She set the table beautifully. When Michael came home, she smiled at him the way she always did. "How was your day, darling?" she asked sweetly. Michael kissed her cheek. "Tiring. But I am happy to be home with you." They ate together. Grace asked about his meetings. Michael lied easily, describing business deals that never happened. Grace watched him and felt nothing but disgust. How had she ever loved this man? After dinner, there was a knock at the door. Michael frowned. "Are you expecting someone?" Grace shook her head innocently. When Michael opened the door, 3 police officers stood outside with Mr. Okonkwo. "Michael Johnson?" the lead officer asked. Michael's face went pale. "Yes, what is this about?" The officer held up an arrest warrant. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and theft. You have the right to remain silent." Michael's eyes went wild. He looked at Grace. "What? Grace, what is going on?" "Tell them this is a mistake." Grace stood up slowly and walked to the door. She looked at her husband with cold eyes. "The only mistake was mine. I trusted you." Michael tried to reach for her, but the officers grabbed his arms. "Grace, please. Whatever you think I did, we can work it out. I love you." Grace pulled out her phone and played the recording Thomas had made. Michael's own voice filled the room. "Once I have access to everything, we can make it look like an accident." Michael's face crumbled. He had no more words. The officers led him away in handcuffs. Neighbors came out to watch. The perfect husband being dragged away like a common criminal. Grace stood at the door with Thomas beside her. She felt tired but free. "Thank you, Thomas. You saved my life." Thomas smiled gently. "Your father would be proud of you, Madam Grace. You are stronger than you know." Grace looked up at the night sky over Lagos. Tomorrow she would begin rebuilding her life. Tonight she had taken back her power. And that was enough. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. It really helps us keep bringing you more stories. Turn on the bell so you don't miss what's coming next.